21st Century Entrepreneurship with Martin Piskarik.
So hi Martin, it's a real pleasure to be here. So I'm Simon Sobrero and I'm part of Decipher Italian, a small boutique language translation agency. But more and more these days, I like to call myself a language consultant or expert, and I'll tell you why very soon. I think the language industry is changing very, very rapidly. The big jumps have taken place about 10 years ago, then 5 years ago. I think this last 1 or 2 years has been a big inflection point. And I think it's very important for people to pay attention now to the dynamics and what's happening. So I think technology is becoming increasingly important. I mean, it's obviously not just in my field, but I think a lot of translators, traditional translators, and by the way, most of them are a bit older than, I think I read a statistic that 25% of translators are what we call digital natives. You know, they're used to computers, they're young people. So a big majority is older people with more experience. And I think there's two subsets of people. The ones with all the answers and the technology are not the same as the ones with all the questions to ask of the technology, like me. And so this is why I think there's two populations. And somewhere in the middle is going to be a bit of I think a renaissance in the language industry. We've got obviously things like ChatGPT, but also an integration with machine translation, which I think in 2016, Google and DeepL brought out neural machine translation, which was already quite a revolutionary thing, but this is 7 years ago. In the last couple of years, we've seen, we're going to see in future, we're going to see an even more exponential growth in the integration of these technologies. And I think what's happening is people are not going to call themselves translators anymore. I think it's important to be an expert in the loop in the translation process. Because if we just assume, I mean, when I talk to people and say I'm a translator, even a few years ago, they were tentatively feeling me to make a little joke about, almost ashamed of the fact that they sometimes use Google Translate. Now it's a real joke. They're almost going to get annoyed with me now, like, what are you? You know, machine translation is the default now. So I have to market myself as a language consultant and an expert in acting more like a clearinghouse, because you're going to come to me with a project that's more than just, I've had a few ideas, I've written a manuscript, can you transform this into English? And by the way, I specialize into English, but a lot of people want many, many languages. So this involves a whole project management structure, or software that's like a content management system. And they have to get the message across to localize and globalize their message. So we can act as the consultants throughout the whole process and say, how are you writing this? What's the thought process behind it? Are you writing in a way that is international? I'm half Italian. My source language is Italian. It was my first language. I love Italy. I'm in Italy right now, actually. And I'm house sitting for a couple of months as a traveling digital nomad that I am. And I'm really enjoying going to museums and talking about the language and the culture. And I still find that a lot of Italians, even the young ones, are still speaking like they're at a university thesis interview. So, beautiful language, but very long. And I think Northern Europeans and Americans are just, please, just get to the point. And they do this all the time. So I want to be there to say to them, have you thought about authoring content in a way that translates easier and cheaper? And for example, now you can go into ChatGPT and you can get the machine to write the copy for you. And that's a good way to train people's brains, is to almost you thinking in the target language. Ironically, because they think they are incapable of speaking English, but a machine can now help you write in English. Now, what's my role in all this is I have to make sure that the machine isn't hallucinating. And we're here to provide consistency. And we're more like curators and annotators and checkers now. So we've got to make sure the target language matches what the original thought was. So we're like mediators. And I think more and more it's about this communication with a customer. And I've had to do a lot of learning about this because up until a few years ago, I like a lot of what used to be called translators. I was hiding a little bit behind the screen, and maybe I was young and a bit more arrogant. And a lot of my emails, I remember looking back, even as just a few years ago, were just very short and very cold and very robotic. Ironic, isn't it? As the machines come, we're learning to become more human and warmer, and nicer, and obviously, and not just in your voice, although it helps to laugh and be warm, but in the email, I think you have to be humble, you have to be warm, come across as warm and helpful. And that means also writing an intelligent email that does all the work for them. Do the thinking for them. Try and write an email in a way that reduces the backwards and forwards, so that we're in the communications industry. We have to, as an entrepreneur, as a boss, even as a freelance worker. And now I've seen the other side of it as an agent, as I've grown into a small agency. I've seen what it's like from all angles, from having to deal with employ translators and editors, and being at the receiving end of quite harsh and lazy treatment sometimes. I've really had to clean up my image and my communication skills, my soft skills, to do the hard work of communicating properly the first time, making sure the message comes across in so many ways. And I think this has to run through the ethos of your company, of the way you conduct your life with integrity, is to be clear and warm and communicative, and have a passion for what you're doing, but also compassion. You're dealing with humans. We're still dealing with humans, and you have to deal with people's emotions. I think you're an expert at this, and you pick up the kind of people you interview are very, very much in tune with this, and probably steps ahead of me, and I'm just kind of relearning this, having to relearn this from scratch, and sometimes the hard way. Be compassionate. The person you're dealing with that day is probably didn't probably have the best sleep. They're not having the best day. They might have some problems at home. And if you're warm with them, they're going to remember you. And so it goes beyond the quality. And by the way, I've recently read an industry report which says that half of language service buyers are still using independent, direct individual linguists, not agencies. And actually the industry is very flat, much more than I thought. I'd always imagined the big translation companies, which I've mostly worked for in my 22 years in the business, I thought they were dominating the industry like big tech companies. But no, so the top 10 players are actually they've only got 20% of the market share. So there's still thousands of small players, and people come back to them because they want quality, they want the personal touch, and they want the transparency. The way I like to be transparent and honest, and I actually have this on my landing page, on my website, and as part of my mission statement, in my life as well, is to, I don't like to just say sorry. I think it's a cheap way of, I think it's cheap to say sorry. I like to back it up with compensation. So if I've made a translator work an extra hour or two, I will give them a bonus. And likewise, if you're a client of mine, and I state this, and I don't find this very often in any industry, but especially in mine. I'm not sure about this, but I think I'm the only agency that I've come across that's specifically explicitly saying that if I've quoted too much, and I like to quote quite a high price, because I really don't like to go back after 3 days and say, oh, I've found something that I didn't see before. Our software is finding your material difficult. Now we're going to have to charge extra or delay delivery. I think that's really unprofessional, and just doesn't show a lot of foresight. So we keep our quotes relatively high, but then we say, we found a way to automate some of this language crunching, or actually a lot of the material was repetitive, or we found a way to make you save money in the way, like I said before, authoring the content, structuring the content so it's shortening it so it's cheaper and easy to translate, even eliminating. Either way, has the project, does it look like it's 30% quicker and cheaper? So we'll deliver early, but also we'll give you the cash back. It's a kind of price promise. Obviously, there's a level of trust. You have to trust that we do this. But why not? Why not be honest? The world is full of people competing and cheating and stealing, and I think people really resonate with that. They'll come back to you. You've given them a discount even after the event, or you've treated them nicely. You've recognized that they've recognized that you're honest with them. Of course they're going to come back to you. You're going to stand out from the competition, even if occasionally you lose a bit of business. I think it's a really important strategy. And likewise, I think if you also act as a conduit, as a sort of clearinghouse for people's projects. So they might come to me and say, so I want people to come to me and say, look, I know you specialize in Italian to English and in certain fields. So we do science and medical and legal and environmental. That's my background, by the way, science, not languages. They might say to me, so we've got a complex project that we want to translate into several languages. We don't know where to start. We're aware there's machine automation out there. Can you help us out? And if we can do it all in-house, fantastic. But actually, lots of the time, there's certain parts of the project we can't handle in-house. And so, again, we have to be honest and say, well, we might be able to outsource some of this. Or often I just say, we're just very honest and say, perhaps you'd like to approach this company instead. They're going to have a much more streamlined procedure. They're going to save you a lot of money. And we would just be cheating. And we would be lying if we said we can do everything for you, like a lot of other players do. And I don't understand why they do that. I think it plays on fear, project fear, that if you're gonna have to hold on to every client you get. I think as an entrepreneur, you have to really let go of grasping and holding and being. It shows scarcity mindset to promise the world and hold on to people who you're actually better off networking a lot of the time and saying, go to my colleague, my trusted colleague, and not just my friend or my, somebody I like, but a trusted colleague or somebody who I'm affiliated with somehow in the industry. And I think what comes around goes around. They will definitely refer to you back. One small example on my website, if you click so I have these really fancy, they were quite complex to program, these calculator buttons, which again I don't see with small agencies and freelancers. There's a kind of black box where you give us an idea of the project or the word count, and we'll give you some random quotes in our own time. We'll come back. It's all very cloak and dagger. Again, I like to be quite straightforward about my fees and rates. So you go on my landing page, there's a big yellow button, you click it, and it gives you a rough quote, and it can sometimes appear quite expensive. But again, you can then contact us through the red button next to it, and we'll give you a much more tailor-made human quote. Now, what's happening with this? So in this quoting, on this page where I quote, I'm also quite explicit that if there's a language that we don't deal with, we've actually got an affiliation program with a larger agency that's actually Italy-based, and I think they're aware of that because I had to link with them through my website. And they have a sort of affinity program. But I'm actually working sometimes, in the past I've worked for them as an agency. And they're very switched on, especially about technology. They actually compiled a report, which is very interesting, talking about machine translation. Now, computing power is growing exponentially, but the jumps and leaps we can make with machine translation is actually exponentially declining, because a lot of the, from jumping from 80 to 90% efficiency took a decade or so, say. But going from 90 to 95 is going to probably take another decade, and then 97, 98, we're never going to, never say never, but I don't think AI is going to reach 100%. We still have a lot of room for human. Again, going back to communication, it's about capturing the nuance of the message, about the intent, the feeling behind the words, and this is still very relevant in voice work and interpreting work that I also do. So they brought out this report which says that because the two forces are acting against each other, so computing power against diminishing returns, you've actually got a linear progression to what some people call the singularity, which sounds a bit scary. I'm not sure it's accurate, actually, because singularity implies that the machines are going to take over the world and make the decisions for us. I think it's called the Turing test, where the machine is indistinguishable from the human. And they say this is going to happen. I've seen the graph, and the date is 2027. So it's 5 years. In 5 years' time, most basic content. So, for example, there's a big hotel chain online, a famous online virtual hotel chain that's translating its reviews in different languages. So you've stayed in Italy, you're an Italian speaker, you leave a review. As an English-speaking guest, you want to know what they've said. It's very important for the hotel. Within 5 years, this is going to be done by the machine. It's going to be indistinguishable from the human translator. Now, increasingly, almost invariably, now we're working as machine translation post editors. So we're still the ones checking the translation process was smooth. And but that, again, it's important for the hotel chain, but it's not life or death, is it? So what we offer is still is the specialist translation. So when it's much more important. So you're dealing with financial transactions worth a lot of money. You're dealing with medical cases, life or death. You're dealing with legal cases. So a few months ago, I went to an interpreting job in a high security prison with an Italian speaker who was looking at a life sentence. In areas like that, you definitely need a human touch and you need the experience. I've got a qualification in legal interpreting, which, this takes a lot of studying. My sister's done many years of interpreting for footballers in the legal industry, in hospitals. So for healthcare as well, it's very important. And you still need so much of this human touch to know what the environment around the language is communicating to you and getting this message across. So I've been in this industry for 22 years, and I've learned that a customer, after dealing with me, with us, they will understand a lot more about the process of the let's say the localization process. They will learn to You will learn to how important it is to trust the small agency that you're hopefully small agency that you're working with, because we can give you a kind of full spectrum care of all your needs from the very beginning to the very end. And let me give you an example of that. You might think it's okay to just upload a bad photocopy of an old document you put together, and that money is not really an object for you, so it doesn't matter what happens at the other end. But this might slow the process down quite considerably. If you had invested, got one of your assistants to invest a little time in finding the original document the document that's in editable format. Now, obviously, it makes the translation a bit cheaper, but it can have actually big knock-on effects because when we receive that, we are much faster at being able to quote, to hire a translation, to quote for a translation price, or increasingly to be able to put through software. Again, this is respecting confidentiality 100%. It's up to you how. Again, you need to think about what kind of technology you are happy for us to use, and we will liaise with you here. So we can input this through the machine and find not only the cheapest and fastest way to translate it, but if it can be how it can be used, if it can be condensed, if we can leverage old translation memories or new translation memories that available on the internet, and actually make the products better and more original, or just a lot more accurate. So that's one factor. The other one is if you've got just a very small team overseeing the project, it's a lot less likely that mistakes will creep in, because I've used big agencies which have got an embarrassingly large number of project managers. They must have a very high turnover, literally hundreds, and so you're not sure who you're dealing with. But that would be fine if it was just a management job. But actually, sometimes they're not. These project managers aren't even language speakers, and so they will start to question the translator's work. They will sometimes even, and this is awful, they will come in and change the language, thinking they know what they're doing, and they're just going to add errors. This means an extra step in the quality management cycle, and we can provide this service. We can even do back translations to check the translator did a good job. And again, if you're prepared for this extra step and the costs involved, it helps us a lot. So you can do a little bit of research before you contact us on what a translation really involves. It's not just a matter of A to B, whether it's a machine or a human. There's a lot more to it. Now, we can help you a lot with that. That's our job, and we're very happy to. But there is actually some preparation you can do, which will save you a lot of headaches later. So there's a lot of information out there, and if you come to us, we can point you in the right direction as to how to prepare. And even at the end, when you've got a finished product, can you do quality assessment on it, and how do you go about doing that? And then how do you pivot into the next language, and where do you go to do that? And maybe if it's a small legal translation, how do you what do you need to notarize it, to get an apostille or a legalization, or sometimes they ask for a sworn translation. If you come to us already armed with this knowledge, it'll save you a lot of time and trouble. But we can help you with this. Actually, I recently read that a third of language providers are now, they call themselves digital nomads, which is what I am. And I had the great fortune of meeting a very good friend of mine who's become a mentor. And it's Arseni at Ihouse Design. Now, he's a growth hacker. He's really helped me with getting my mind ready for marketing. And I had a lot of fear coming into this. And he's shown me that it's about taking small steps. And it can be a lot of fun, just the learning process of how to hack and shortcut your way into marketing and getting those followers and getting those leads, but also how to present yourself in the best way possible. And it's been a lot of fun, and he's a good example of somebody warm with people, but also cool in his head. And it's about never giving up and every day doing even the tiny, small steps, and you'd be surprised how it all builds up. And I'd also like to give so much thanks and gratitude to my family. Now, we come from 3 generations of translators, but we're all doing different combinations and different jobs within this industry. So it's not been an easy ride for any of us. I've not had an easy time, but they were there supporting me and just teaching me a lot about keeping going, and about giving me a love for language and for communication and word games. And especially my mum always teases me about when I was a child, I used to spend longer finding a shorter sentence than it would have taken just to write it. And I think this is fascinating. But now I'm loving ChatGPT and AI, because it's all about the questions you give it, and engineering these questions and these prompts is really is what takes a lot of time, and but it's worth the investment. It's not about the answers, it's about the questions. Thank you so much, Martin. Thank you so much, Martin. It's been really wonderful speaking to you. And for the listeners, if you're just starting out in the industry, do contact me, and I can help you find your way in the industry. And if you're a customer and want to discuss any facets of the language industry and the future, I'd love to help you. Get in touch at www.decipheritalian.com. And I really look forward to working with you and meeting you.
21st Century Entrepreneurship with Martin Piskarik.
Imagine a space where triumphs, trials, and tales of entrepreneurship come alive. Welcome to the 21st Century Entrepreneurship Podcast, a gold awarded journey hosted by Martin Piskarik, connecting with listeners in 95 countries and ranking in the top 0.5% of all podcasts. Join our exclusive community, elevate your perspective, and embark on the path to success.